Hello, everyone. My name is Gregory, and this is The View from Out Here. This week, outgoing President Joe Biden pardoned his family members, Hillary Clinton, and the January 6th committee members in anticipation of retaliation against them by incoming cult leader Donald Trump. At present, only one of the people President Biden has just pardoned have been charged with, let alone found guilty of any crimes. Trump, as you know, spent much of his campaign threatening to use the Department of Justice to prosecute a whole slew of people who attempted to hold him accountable for a plethora, no, a veritable cornucopia of felony crimes, 88 of them to be exact. 34 of them actually made it to trial, and Trump was found guilty on all 34 of them. For the first time in history, the people have elected a convicted felon as president of the United States. The sentence for these 34 felonies is, oh, well, he's been elected president, so there's really nothing we can do about it. From out here, it looks unlikely that he will face justice for any of the remaining 54 indictments that remain hanging in the air as I speak. So today, I want to talk about the rule of law. To do that, let's circle back to 1970 during the Nixon administration. Congress passed the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, better known as RICO. RICO is a vicious little piece of legislation that was designed to go after the mob. Here's a little bit of it that I talked about back in the 90s. If you were to take $10,000 or more dollars in cash out of your bank account, that bank is required by law to report that to the government. If you were to carry that $10,000 in cash in a U.S. airport, the police can arrest you and take that $10,000 and keep it even if you are never charged with a crime. Simply possessing the $10,000 in cash is enough. The police or FBI can legally assume that that $10,000 was obtained in the commission of a crime. It began what I believe is the erosion of the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution. Let's have a look at what the Fourth Amendment actually says. The Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Talk about a run-on sentence. Back in the 90s, I talked about this $10,000 thing in my cable access show, Street Level, because there was a story in the news at the time where this actually happened to a guy, and he was never charged with a crime, and he never got his $10,000 back. It wasn't limited to airports either. For a while after the passage of RICO, some unscrupulous police departments in the South were stopping interstate drivers in expensive cars, hoping to find large amounts of cash that they could confiscate and then use to fund their small town police departments. Okay, back to my story. Nixon, as you know, resigned the presidency in 1974 to protect himself from accountability for the felony crimes like breaking and entering and interfering with an election and conspiracy and some other stuff. Let's jump forward to 1977, when Nixon agreed to a series of interviews with British journalist David Frost. In one of those interviews, when they were talking about specifically the Watergate break-in, Nixon uttered this famous phrase.
Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
By definition.
Exactly.
The whole world was stunned by that statement, and David Frost, poor thing, nearly shit a brick right there on TV. This was the first indication I know of that the notion was posited that the President of the United States is above the law. That was over 50 years ago. Richard Nixon was a Republican. Now, I want you to put a pin in that because we're going to come back to it later. Next, we move on to 1980 and Ronald Reagan, the Teflon Don, the closest thing the Republicans have to a god. The actor turned politician who began his political career with a spoken word record album about how much he hated Social Security. He was the originator who gave us the trickle-down economics theory, which is to cut taxes on the wealthy and expect the money to come trickling down to everyone else. Of course, we know now that that never happened. The trickling down, I mean. Ronald Reagan, the original gangster of Star Wars, with his space defense system that Donald Trump is now circling back to with his protective dome over the United States, and not a moment too soon. It appears that the U.S. military has finally admitted that we've been visited by extraterrestrial travelers repeatedly since Roswell, New Mexico, back in 1947. Of course, there's evidence to suggest that we haven't been alone in the universe since pre-biblical times. Read the first chapter of Ezekiel and tell me that that's not a UFO. Go ahead, push pause, I'll wait. Now that the military has admitted that it's happening, they needed to give those vehicles a shiny new name. UAPs, or unidentified aerial phenomena. We have traditionally called them UFOs, or unidentified flying objects, and then questioned the sanity of anyone who stepped forward to claim that they have seen or been abducted by one or more of them. Full disclosure, close personal friend and I saw one in Humboldt County, California in 1980. Of course, we were both smoking a joint sitting on the porch at the time, but we both did say the same thing and acknowledge that to one another right there while we were sitting on the porch with our joints. So who knows? I'm surprised by how quickly the UAP UFO story disappeared from legacy media, while they are still on the increase across the country. I just learned a few weeks ago that 3 have been spotted by 2 airline pilots and 1 life flight pilot right here in Oregon. Now, all 3 describe seeing the same thing, but there's nothing to see here, folks. Go on about your business. These aren't the droids you are looking for. Now, none of this is unconstitutional or even illegal, but there was the Iran-Contra cocaine for arms smuggling operation, which laid waste to inner city neighborhoods across the country and gave us crack cocaine. That was illegal, and the Teflon Don was never brought to justice for it. Now, let's fast forward to 2000 and the Cheney administration. Okay, I get it. It was legally the Bush administration on the cover, but it was the Cheney administration once you open the book and start reading. George Bush Jr. was only the spokesmodel in that story. He's an artist and an entertainer. He had little interest in the work that a president does. He's just like Donald Trump in that regard. He just wanted to be a celebrity and have people watch him play golf. And he needed to keep his dad off his back about getting a real job and doing something constructive with his life. Which leads us to Darth Cheney, a dark little soul who was clearly afraid of his own shadow. The Cheney administration gave us the Patriot Act, which pretty well finished the job of gutting what remained of the Fourth Amendment. By now, we are all well conditioned to being searched and having our stuff confiscated on a daily basis at outdoor events, concerts, airports, courthouses, plenty of other places where we gather. In any way that matters, the Fourth Amendment is toast. They didn't even need a constitutional convention or a 2/3 majority of the states to ratify it, like the Constitution demands. Cheney also gave us enhanced interrogation, Abu Ghraib, and Guantanamo Bay, all of which laid waste to the constitutional concept of fair and equal treatment under the law and international law, incidentally. But we're not done with Darth Cheney yet. There's also the commuting of the sentence of White House staffer Scooter Libby after his conviction for felony perjury and obstruction of justice for his successful protection of Cheney and Bush from charges of treason. Not many people who don't read the congressional record will remember Ohio Congressman Dennis Kucinich's 35 articles of impeachment, which included treason. It was never even investigated. One more thing, Cheney and Bush are both Republicans. Let's put a pin in that too. Okay, jump to 2016 and the Mueller report on Donald Trump's collusion with hostile foreign powers in the 2016 election. And of course, the denying of the 2020 election, despite the crimes that he committed to try to cheat his way into the White House for a second time. Oh, yeah, and his 2 impeachments. Anyway, that's all wrapped up in the 54 remaining indictments that I mentioned earlier. Oh, by the way, some of these indictments revolve around espionage as well. The president stockpiled a trove of highly classified documents in an unguarded bathroom at Mar-a-Lago, for which he is suspected of planning to share with hostile foreign powers in his deal-making to make America great again. Less than 24 hours after Uncle Joe issued his pardons, President Donald Trump pardoned all of the violent January 6 convicts that tried to overthrow the government at his bidding. About 1,500 in all. The QAnon shaman, Jacob Chansley, had an immediate response when he learned of his pardon. He said, "I'm going to go out and buy a bunch of mother effing guns." It would appear that the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers will continue to stand back and stand by, awaiting further orders from their commander-in-chief, who appears to be amassing his own personal army aside from the U.S. military. This private army has been training every day for decades in rural areas in various states across the country, including my home state of Michigan, waiting for their next chance to help usher in the new golden age of America. On his very first day in office, President Trump signed roughly 150 executive orders, many of them in front of an audience of sycophants in an arena in Washington, D.C., shortly after the inauguration. Here's a clip of part of that ceremony. And I want you to pay close attention to what the announcer is saying about what Donald Trump is signing.
The second item, President Trump, is a regulatory freeze, as you announced in your speech, preventing bureaucrats from issuing any more regulations until we have full control of this, the government and this administration. Thank you, sir.
Sir, can I have a pen?
The next item, sir, is a freeze on all federal hiring, excepting the military and a number of other excluded categories, again, until full control of the government is achieved and we understand the objectives of government going forward.
You might remember me telling you about a quote by Republican political operative Grover Norquist, who back in the late 80s was talking about all we need in a president is a guy with enough working digits to operate a pen, and we, the Republican Party, can handle the rest. As you can see in that clip, Donald Trump qualifies. But an ominous chill went up my spine when I heard that announcer say, "Until we have complete control of the government." Complete control. Full control. That wasn't the president saying that. That was the Heritage Foundation. They are the people who will actually be running this administration. Donald Trump has no interest in governing. He's interested in money, power, and fame. And anything beyond that, he is happy to leave to the Heritage Foundation, to Elon Musk and a cadre of other uber-wealthy businessmen who are clearly right now drooling over the prospect of this new freedom to grift the United States to their heart's content. You might remember that I told you a few months ago about the training videos that the Heritage Foundation was posting right here on YouTube about how to qualify to be a government employee in the coming Trump administration. They appeared to know the outcome of the election back in July or August when Trump was running around the country telling people not to bother voting, that he had all the votes he needed to take back the White House. You could say he was talking about the Electoral College, but something is just not right, that the Heritage Foundation knew what the outcome of the election would be in July or August. The math ain't mathin'. Okay, anyway, here's where I want you to pull out all those pins I mentioned earlier as I pose you this question. What do all of these things have in common? I'll give you a minute. That's right, they all happened during Republican administrations. The Republican Party, the loyal opposition, the law and order party, the the adults in the room, abandoned their claim to the rule of law over 50 years ago. You may have noticed how the severity of the lawlessness of the Republican Party has gently increased in intensity over time until they actually presented you with a convicted felon to be their conservative cult figurehead. I don't know how many of you noticed that Donald Trump did not put his hand on any Bible while taking the oath of office. He did raise his right hand, but he needed his left hand free to cross his fingers behind his back. He has no intention to protect or defend the Constitution of the United States. It's just too much of an impediment to his grifting. It would appear that the Republican Party has finally brought our glorious experiment in democracy to a close. They wish to welcome you to the new golden age of plutocracy. It was a good run, my people. 247 years is nothing to look down your nose at. But alas, history slithers on. Meanwhile, I wish you peace, I wish you safety, and I wish you enough in the coming years under this new golden age. I want to thank you for hanging with me so far. If you're finding anything of value in this channel, I'd appreciate it if you take a second to like and subscribe with the buttons below. Now, this is episode number 42, and you may have noticed that my studio looks a little different now. I've taken down the big posters of my book covers in favor of the actual books themselves. If you squint a little bit, you may be able to see them. They're right here. Searching for Saint Germain, Basic Video Production, and Video Podcast Primer. If you want to support this channel, that's how to do it. I get nothing from YouTube yet. Maybe someday, but not today. Anyway, you'll find links to all 3 books in the description below, and if you have Kindle Plus, you can read them all for free. Oh, by the way, this is for local people. Searching for Saint Germain is now available at some fine local retailers right here in Portland, so if you live nearby, I've listed them in the description below if you're so inclined to want to buy them. Meanwhile, my name is Gregory, and this has been The View from Out Here. Much love.
Come on. Trying to